People look back in the past and they'll say, oh, back in those days, they had eugenics. It was such a strange time to be alive. But today, eugenics is mainstream. People can harken back to the 1800s and to the 1900s, and they can say, well, eugenics was mainstream, social Darwinism was mainstream, and they would be correct in making such an observation. But eugenics is mainstream today. Elon Musk believes in eugenics. He has this employee, her name is Siobhan Zillis, and he told Siobhan Zillis, you're a really intelligent woman and you should have twins. Because if you have twins, hey, that's double the power of intelligence in your offspring. When they were talking about getting a sperm donor from someone who was quote-unquote intelligent, Elon Musk actually said, hey, take my semen. And so she got injected with Elon Musk's sperm and she had twins. And she said that the reason why Elon Musk wanted her to have twins was because, well, she's an intelligent woman, and he insisted that it would be his sperm injected inside of her to get those intelligent babies. So when you see someone as powerful as Elon Musk believing in eugenics, well, it tells us that eugenics is mainstream. Another person who has been mainstream and influential and who believes in eugenics is Dominic Cummings. Dominic Cummings was actually the mind behind Brexit. It wasn't Nigel Farage, whose last name, by the way, sounds more Lebanese, if anything. Doesn't sound too British. It wasn't Boris Johnson. It was Dominic Cummings. And Dominic Cummings is a eugenist. He believes that in the future, embryo selection for intelligence is going to be mainstream, but he has expressed his worry that embryo selection for intelligence will only be something that rich people will do, and he wants poor people to do it also. He wants all people to be doing embryo selection for intelligence because that's going to make the world a better place. They have this belief that if every woman just gets the intelligent semen through the turkey baster, that this is going to establish some sort of a utopian vision that they have in their sick heads. And people believe in this stuff, they advance this agenda, and they never think to themselves, or really I should say, they don't want to confront the reality that the world tried this very idea in the past and it led to World War II, the Holocaust. It's like, we've done this before, and it led to destruction. It led to absolute chaos and devastation and the deaths of countless tens of millions of people. And they want to revive this evil idea, like getting the game Jumanji from underneath the ground, or like reading the Book of the Dead in the film The Mummy, where the guy says, you must not read from the book, and they read from the book, and it revives this old ancient monster. And in this case, they are reviving this monster from the 18 and 1900s. And they think, well, this time we'll do it right. We're not going to lead ourselves into another Holocaust. We're not going to lead ourselves into a Nazi genocide. No. Nothing can go wrong from this. Nothing. We just want to do embryo selection so we can prevent certain diseases. And that's the whole Moat and Bailey behind this. They say it's to prevent diseases. We're going to make a healthier world. We're going to prevent children from being born with certain diseases, etc., etc. That's the Moat and Bailey. You have the moat, you got the Bailey. They give you the moat, they want to take the Bailey, because the end result of all of this is eugenics. And that's why they're talking about doing embryo selection for intelligence. They want to pick the embryo that to them has the intelligent genes, and the rest of the human embryos just get thrown to the trash. And eventually that's what they would do to people who are already born. You don't have the intelligent gene. So into the camp with you, and ultimately into the gas chamber. And is it a coincidence that the mind behind Brexit is actually a eugenist? What did Brexit do? Brexit removed Britain as the main obstacle, really as the only obstacle to Germany's aspiration for creating a pan-European military force that it would lead. In other words, the Germans have been wanting to create another Reich. They have been wanting to create a pan-European military force that they would lead, and this essentially would just be another German Reich with its European auxiliaries. And the British, for years, said, no, no, no. The British were the biggest hindrances to this idea, to this crazy-ass idea. And Brexit removed Britain from the European Union, and by removing Britain from the European Union, now the Germans have no one to say no to them when pursuing this aspiration of creating a German-led pan-European military bloc. And is it a coincidence that the mind behind this idea is someone who believes in the very ideology that the Nazis upheld, the very ideology that the Nazis used to justify the genocide that they orchestrated? One of the eugenists of our time is a Bangladeshi American named Razib Khan. Khan actually sequenced his son's genome in utero, and this was the first time that something like this happened without the child being born with complications or eventually dying. And Khan gave the reason as to why he did this. He said that he didn't want his son to be born with particular diseases. And this is the reason why they tell people this. They want people to get on board with eugenics. And in order to do this, they get them comfortable with the idea of eugenics by telling them that it's to prevent disease. And we can all agree that we don't want children being born with diseases. So this is a way to get people conditioned to the idea of eugenics. But at the end of this tunnel is not light, it's hell. Because the reason behind the pretext is eugenics and social Darwinism. First, they say, let's screen embryos for disease. And then they say, let's screen embryos for intelligence. They're looking for the intelligence gene, and they want people only with this intelligence gene to be born. And first they go after the embryos, because not enough people see the humanity in embryos, and then they go after the humans who are already born. And they'll say, you don't have the intelligence gene. Off to the camp you go. Off to the gas chamber you go. In fact, Razib Khan says that we are currently living in the second age of eugenics. And indeed, eugenics is still mainstream. Eugenics was not destroyed after World War II. It continued on. The question I have is, what was the first age of eugenics? The first age of eugenics was in the late 1800s, going into the first half of the 20th century. And what was the end result of the first age of eugenics? The Nazi Holocaust. That was the denouement. That was the end result. That was the outcome in the first age of eugenics. So the question I have is, since the first age of eugenics ended with the Holocaust, why in the hell are you trying to revive eugenics? Why in the hell are you pushing this utopian vision, which is really dystopian, of the second age of eugenics? Why are you pushing this idea of the second age of eugenics if the first age of eugenics ended in hell? And this Razib Khan guy says, well, the world will be a better place if embryos were screened for intelligence. And this is the very guy who says that we're living in the second age of eugenics. What happened in the first age? What was the end result of the first age? Nazism, the Holocaust. So why in the hell are you pushing for a second age? Oh, it's because you guys want to do another Holocaust. And it's not a coincidence that Razib Khan's colleague is Spencer Wells. Spencer Wells was at one point in time a popular figure who worked for National Geographic. You know, he talked about the genetics of Central Asian people and their genetic story, and it was quite fascinating. But Spencer Wells wants to start another Holocaust. Spencer Wells lost all of his credibility and his prestige, and he lost his position in National Geographic when he stated that Israel should be bombed until it turns to glass. So isn't it interesting that the person who says that we are in the second age of eugenics, Razib Khan, this is what he says, has a colleague who wants to resume from where the Nazis left off. He wants to resume the Nazi Holocaust. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that you have these geneticists who want to do genocide, because what happened in the Holocaust? You had a bunch of European psychopaths who had a religion of science. This was the religion of Nazism. The Nazis had a cult of science. You have atheists today who try to make this argument that Nazism had some sort of a root with Christianity, and they'll point to evangelical Christians today, and they'll say things like, oh, the evangelicals, those people, they're far right. They're far right. Yes, the evangelicals who are against abortion, who are pro-life, and who are against embryo selection are Nazis, when the reality is that the Nazis hated Christianity, and their hatred of Christianity was so intense that it was actually closer to the hatred for Christianity that you see in modern-day atheists. And the atheists revere Charles Darwin. They love and they uplift Charles Darwin. And the Nazis revered Darwinism. They had a fanatical fixation on Darwinism and evolutionism. Let's actually look at what Hitler said about what Nazism is. And this is from a speech that Hitler gave in September of 1938. National Socialism is a cool and highly reasoned approach to reality based upon the greatest of scientific knowledge and its spiritual expression. And then later on in the same speech, he said, the National Socialist movement is not a cult movement. Isn't it interesting? The leader of Nazism is telling people Nazism is not a cult, and you see women who are crying and going hysterical for him, and entire crowds, entire multitudes of people willing to commit genocide for him. But no, Nazism is not a cult, trust me. The National Socialist movement is not a cult movement. Rather, it is a vokish and political philosophy which grew out of considerations of an exclusively racist nature. So Hitler is saying here, Nazism is not a cult. Nazism is an approach to science, to the greatest of scientific knowledge, to use his words. Nazism had nothing to do with Christianity, and it had everything to do with Darwinism and eugenics. The ideology, the worldview of Nazism was that only people of a particular genetic makeup are worthy of the right to life and are worthy of having offspring. Other peoples who are of inferior genetic makeups, according to the Nazis, were worthy of destruction or being slaves. And today you have people talking about screening humans for intelligence, screening humans for the gene of intelligence. And we've all seen this story before, and we all know where it leads to. This is the second age of eugenics, according to Razib Khan, but the reality is that it's just the continuation of the same damn thing. It's just repackaged. The road to destruction is paved by people who claim to have good intentions. Because the saying goes that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I would argue that the road to hell is paved by people who claim to have good intentions, who give people pretexts to get them comfortable with their insidious and evil objectives. And behind the claim of good intentions is a diabolical motivation that will lead to utter devastation, horror, and immensible human suffering. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.